homes across the country, behind closed doors and drawn curtains, there exists a form of violence that strikes at the very heart of family and security. It is not carried out by strangers in the shadows, nor by faceless figures lurking in the dark. Instead, it often comes from the people closest to us, partners, husbands, lovers, the very ones who are supposed to protect and cherish. This crime is devastating, not only because of its brutality, but because so many who suffer it remain silent, unwilling or unable to press charges against the person they once trusted most. For more than a year, the Thames Valley Police allowed unprecedented access to their officers. Investigations in courtrooms. Their work revealed a reality that is as heartbreaking as it is urgent. The struggle of three extraordinary women who found the courage to come forward, to speak out, and to confront the violence in their lives, from the first frantic call to the police through the long and painful journey to trial and into the uncertain days that followed. Their experiences show both the horror of domestic abuse and the resilience of those determined to escape it. One woman remembers the suffocating grip of her partner's hand around her throat. Another recalls the moment her children screamed as violence shattered the fragile calm of their home. A third describes the numb silence after years of intimidation, where words have become too dangerous to speak. Their voices echo the experiences of countless others. But what makes their journeys extraordinary is not only their survival, but their willingness to stand before the law and demand justice. Domestic violence is often described as a hidden crime. The signs may be visible: bruises, broken possessions, frightened children, but the stories behind them are concealed by shame, fear, and manipulation. Victims wrestle with impossible choices, the pull of love against the weight of betrayal, the fear of retribution against the hope of safety, the desire to protect children against the terror of breaking a family apart. For police officers, navigating these emotions requires not only skill and professionalism, but also empathy and patience. On a cold winter night, a call comes into the control room. A woman's voice trembles as she reports an assault. She is terrified, her words broken by sobs, her location uncertain. Within minutes, patrol cars are dispatched. Blue lights cut through the darkness as officers race to the scene, knowing that in cases of domestic abuse, every second matters. When they arrive, the house is quiet, but the silence feels heavy. A man answers the door, calm but defensive. Inside, a woman sits on the sofa, her face streaked with tears, her hands shaking. The officers separate them, leading her into the kitchen where she whispers fragments of the story. A fight that escalated, a shove against the wall, a hand across her face. She insists she doesn't want him arrested, only that the violence stops. But the officers know the law has changed. Even without her formal complaint, they can and must take action if they believe a crime has been committed. This approach, known as evidence-led prosecution, reflects a shift in the way domestic violence cases are handled. Too often, victims withdraw their statements out of fear, pressure, or financial dependence. By collecting physical evidence, photographs of injuries, recordings of emergency calls, statements from children or neighbors, police and prosecutors can move forward. Even when the victim feels unable to testify, it is a difficult balance, protecting a person's autonomy while ensuring their safety. For survivors, the process can feel overwhelming. One woman describes the aftermath of calling the police as stepping into a storm. Suddenly, her private pain becomes public. Officers photograph bruises, seize clothing, and record testimony. Social services may become involved, asking about children and living arrangements. Friends and family are questioned. The home, once a place of secrecy, is now a scene of evidence. For some, it feels like a second violation, necessary, perhaps, but deeply unsettling. And yet, without this intervention, many would remain trapped. Statistics reveal that on average, a victim experiences violence 35 times before seeking help. Fear of not being believed, fear of financial ruin, fear of retaliation, all keep them silent. When they finally do reach out, the response they receive can mean the difference between escape and continued suffering. Among the cases followed in this investigation is that of Rachel. For years she endured cycles of control and intimidation. Her partner's temper could ignite, without warning, turning an ordinary evening into a scene of terror. She recalls the night she finally dialed 999, her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold the phone. "I thought he was going to kill me," she says, when officers arrived. They found broken furniture, scattered belongings, and Rachel curled in a corner, clutching her arm. In another case, Sarah's story begins not with physical violence, but with manipulation. Her partner isolated her from friends, controlled her money, and undermined her confidence until she doubted her own worth. Over time, the psychological abuse escalated into slaps, then punches. She stayed, she says, because leaving seemed impossible. He told me I was nothing without him. Sarah recalls, and after a while, I started to believe it. It was only when her young daughter witnessed a violent outburst, screaming in fear, that Sarah realized the cycle had to end. Then there is Claire, whose partner's violence left visible scars. She remembers the feel of his hand around her throat, the world narrowing as she struggled for breath. Even after escaping, the memory haunted her. Sometimes I wake up and I can still feel it, she admits. For Claire, coming forward meant reliving those moments again and again with the police, with doctors, and eventually in front of strangers in a courtroom. These women's stories are not unique, but they are vital. Through them, we see the courage it takes to speak out, the pain of revisiting trauma, and the fragile hope of justice. Each step of their journey is fraught with obstacles, but also illuminated by moments of strength. The kindness of an officer, the solidarity of a support worker, the reassurance of knowing they are not alone. For officers, domestic abuse is unlike any other crime. They are not responding to a burglary or a street fight where the victim and offender are strangers. Instead, they walk into the most intimate of spaces, a family home. They encounter couples who may have shared years of history, children who love both parents, and households where violence is tangled with love, dependency, and fear. Each call-out demands not only professionalism, but sensitivity and an understanding of human vulnerability. The Thames Valley Police team knows that when a victim opens the door and allows them inside, they are stepping into fragile territory. A single misstep, a word spoken too harshly, a doubt expressed too openly, can shatter trust. Officers must read the atmosphere instantly. Is the victim ready to talk? Or are they still terrified? Is the abuser hovering in the background, listening to every word? Are children present, silently absorbing the chaos around them? The first priority is always safety. Suspects are removed, victims are separated, and the scene is secured. From there, the delicate process of evidence collection begins. Bruises are photographed, damaged property is documented, and statements are carefully taken. These early moments can prove decisive later in court, but unlike other cases, officers know that the victim may later withdraw support. Fear, pressure, or reconciliation can lead to a sudden change of heart. One detective explains, "It is not unusual for someone to give a strong statement in the middle of the night, and by morning they've changed their mind completely. They'll say they made it all up, or they don't want to press charges. That's why we gather as much independent evidence as possible, so the case doesn't collapse." Body-worn cameras have become an essential tool. They capture the raw, unfiltered reality of abuse, the panic in a victim's voice, the disarray of a ransacked home, the defensive anger of an arrested suspect. Unlike written words on a page, video evidence can bring the truth into the courtroom with undeniable force. Judges and juries can see what officers saw, hear the tone of a victim's voice, and witness the aftermath of violence. In Rachel's case, body cam footage showed her partner shouting as officers entered the home, insisting that nothing had happened, while Rachel's face told a different story. Later, when she hesitated about giving testimony, that recording became a central piece of evidence. For Sarah, photographs taken that night revealed bruises across her arms where she had been grabbed. A neighbor, disturbed by shouting, agreed to provide a statement, and her terrified daughter's words, gently recorded by trained specialists, helped establish a pattern of abuse that stretched beyond one evening. Yet despite the growing arsenal of evidence, these cases remain painfully difficult to prosecute. Defense lawyers argue that victims are exaggerating, that arguments between partners are being criminalized, or that the accused is being punished for nothing more than a heated exchange. When victims refuse to attend court, juries may doubt the seriousness of the allegations. Without a visible face to testify, the human cost of abuse can seem abstract. This is why support services are vital. Independent domestic violence advisors, known as IDVA letters, guide victims through the labyrinth of the justice system. They explain the process, prepare them for court, and act as a steady presence when everything else feels uncertain. For many survivors, the IDVA is the first person they truly trust after years of betrayal. Claire remembers meeting her advisor shortly after the police intervened. "She didn't judge me. She didn't tell me what to do. She just listened. For the first time, I felt like someone actually believed me." That validation gave Claire the strength to move forward, even when every instinct told her to stay silent. But support alone cannot erase the fear. Many victims worry about what will happen if the case goes to trial. Will the abuser retaliate? Will friends or family take sides? Will the children suffer? These questions weigh heavily, often pushing survivors back toward the very relationships that harmed them. Police officers see this pattern repeatedly. They return to the same addresses, arrest the same suspects, and hear the same pleas for leniency. Each time, the stakes rise. Violence escalates over time, becoming more severe, more dangerous, and sometimes lethal. Breaking the cycle requires not only courage from the victim, but determination from the entire system to stand firm against intimidation and manipulation. One chilling reality is the use of strangulation as a method of control. Studies show that when a partner has strangled their victim, the risk of future homicide increases dramatically. Officers now treat such assaults with the utmost seriousness, recognizing them as a clear warning sign of escalating danger. Claire's story illustrates this grim truth. The night her partner wrapped his hand around her throat, she truly believed it was the end. That memory is what ultimately convinced her to proceed with charges. "I realized if I didn't, next time I might not survive," she says quietly. Beyond the immediate violence, the long-term effects are profound. Victims describe ongoing anxiety, nightmares, and a constant sense of hypervigilance. Simple sounds, a door slamming, footsteps on stairs can trigger memories of fear. Children who grow up witnessing abuse often carry the scars into adulthood, struggling with trust, relationships, and emotional stability. By intervening, the police are not only protecting one individual, but potentially breaking a cycle that could span generations. As investigations progress, detectives build case files thick with statements, photographs, and forensic reports. Each piece of evidence adds weight, but they know that without a compelling narrative, juries may struggle to grasp the lived reality of abuse. Their challenge is to piece together fragments, a torn shirt, a frantic 999 call, a child's whispered words, into a story that reflects the truth. For Rachel, that truth was stark. Her partner's violence was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern that had unfolded over years. Friends had noticed her withdrawing from social events. Colleagues had seen her cover bruises with long sleeves, and neighbors had occasionally heard arguments through the walls. Together, these threads formed a picture of coercion and control. The legal system, however, demands clarity. It asks victims to recall events in precise detail, to withstand cross-examination, to remain composed while their credibility is challenged. For survivors already traumatized, this can feel unbearable. Many describe the courtroom experience as more intimidating than the abuse itself, facing the person who hurt them, surrounded by strangers, while being questioned about the most painful moments of their lives. It is an ordeal few can prepare for, and yet, some find strength in that moment. Standing in court, telling their story aloud, they reclaim a measure of power that had been stolen. They demonstrate not only what was done to them, but who they truly are, survivors, not victims. As the investigation moves forward, each case takes on a life of its own. Police officers hand their files to prosecutors, who must decide whether the evidence is strong enough to bring to court. For the women at the center of these cases, the wait is agonizing. Weeks turn into months as hearings are scheduled, adjourned, and rescheduled. Each delay reopens old wounds, leaving them trapped between past trauma and future uncertainty. For Rachel, the lead up to trial felt like walking through fog. She describes the constant unease of knowing her partner would soon sit across from her in court. "I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I thought about it, I felt sick. It was like I was right back in that house again, waiting for him to snap." The justice system, with its rituals and traditions, is designed to ensure fairness. But for survivors of domestic abuse, the formality can be overwhelming. The courtroom is not a sanctuary. It is a battlefield where truth and memory are tested under scrutiny. Lawyers in dark suits speak in careful legal terms. Judges sit high above, commanding order, and the accused, often neatly dressed and composed, may appear far removed from the violence they are accused of committing. Victims are prepared for this contrast, but the impact is still jarring. Claire recalls the moment she saw her abuser in the dock. He looked so calm, like he had nothing to hide. For a second I thought maybe I was the crazy one. Maybe I had imagined it all. That's what he always told me, that I was making things up. But then I remembered the bruises, the fear in my kids' eyes, the nights I thought I wouldn't make it. That's what got me through. To support witnesses through this ordeal, courts provide special measures. Victims may give evidence from behind a screen, shielding them from direct confrontation. or testify via video link from a separate room. These options are meant to reduce intimidation. But even then, the psychological weight is immense. Survivors know their words will be dissected, challenged, and doubted. Defense lawyers probe for inconsistencies. They highlight moments where victims hesitated, reconciled, or returned home after an attack. They suggest exaggeration, fabrication, or revenge. Each question feels like an accusation, forcing survivors to relive trauma while defending their own credibility. For many, this is the hardest part of the journey. Sarah remembers being cross-examined about why she stayed. They made it sound like I chose the abuse, like I wanted it. I wanted to scream that they didn't understand. That leaving isn't simple when you raise scared for your life, when you've got a child depending on you, when you don't even believe you deserve better. But in court, you can't scream. You just answer as calmly as you can while inside you're falling apart. Prosecutors, meanwhile, work to present the wider context. They show juries the 999 calls, the photographs, the body cam footage. They call neighbors, doctors, and police officers to testify. Each piece of evidence is another voice supporting the survivor's story. Together, they build a narrative that cannot be dismissed as a lover-esque quarrel or a moment of passion. Still, convictions are never guaranteed. Juries may sympathize with defendants, particularly if they appear respectable in court. They may believe that without the victim's consistent testimony, the truth cannot be proven beyond reasonable doubt, even when there is strong evidence. Verdicts can swing unpredictably. For Rachel, the trial ended in a guilty verdict. She remembers the flood of relief when the judge announced the decision. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. It didn't take away the pain, but it gave me hope that maybe he couldn't hurt me anymore. Her partner received a custodial sentence, and though Rachel's journey of recovery was far from over, the verdict marked the beginning of freedom. For Claire, the outcome was more complicated. Despite the evidence, the jury could not reach a unanimous decision. After days of deliberation, the case was declared a mistrial. She describes the moment as crushing. I'd opened up everything, relived every detail, and in the end it felt like it was for nothing. He walked out of court smiling, while I walked out feeling smaller than ever. But even without a conviction, Claire refuses to see herself as defeated. I survived. That's my victory. Sarah's case revealed another reality, the role of plea bargains. Faced with overwhelming evidence, her partner admitted to some charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. It was not the full acknowledgement of guilt she had hoped for, but it spared her the ordeal of testifying. I wanted him to stand there and hear everything he'd done, but at the same time, I don't think I could have gone through with it. So when they told me he pleaded guilty, I felt relief more than anything. Trials exposed not only the abuser, but also the fragility of the survivor. Each detail is laid bare, each contradiction magnified. Yet within this painful process lies a quiet strength. To walk into that courtroom, to sit in the witness box, to speak aloud the truth. It is an act of courage that cannot be measured by verdicts alone. For the police and prosecutors who work on these cases, the outcomes are bittersweet. Every conviction is a triumph, but every collapse or acquittal is a reminder of the system's limits. Officers return to their desks knowing another call could come at any moment, another victim waiting for help, another cycle of violence to confront. And for the women at the heart of these stories, the end of a trial is not the end of their journey. Whether their cases result in conviction, mistrial, or plea deal, they must step into the next chapter of their lives, one marked by healing, rebuilding, and redefining who they are beyond the shadow of abuse. When the courtroom doors close and the verdict is read, the justice system moves on to its next case. For survivors, however, life after trial is where the hardest work begins. The relief of seeing an abuser sentenced, or the devastation of watching them walk free, does not erase the years of fear that came before. Healing is a process measured not in weeks or months, but in small, fragile steps forward. Rachel describes the strange quiet of her home after her partner's imprisonment. For so long, I was used to listening for his footsteps, bracing myself for the door to slam, waiting for the shouting to start. Suddenly, there was just silence. At first it felt peaceful, but then it felt strange, like I didn't even know how to live without fear anymore. For Sarah, rebuilding meant learning to trust again. Years of coercion and psychological abuse had left deep scars. She doubted her own judgment, questioned every decision, and struggled to believe she deserved happiness. Support services provided counseling, group sessions, and practical help with housing and finances. Slowly, she began to piece together a new life for herself and her daughter. It wasn't easy, she admits, but each day I got a little stronger, I looked at my daughter and thought, she deserves better, and so do I. Claire's path was more complicated. With her case unresolved, she lived with the lingering fear of retaliation. Simple errands like walking to the shop or taking her children to school became sources of anxiety. She checked over her shoulder constantly, half expecting to see her abuser appear. Yet even in this uncertainty, Claire discovered resilience she hadn't known she possessed. He tried to break me, she says, but I'm still here. That's something he'll never take away. For police officers and support workers, the aftermath is often the most rewarding and the most sobering part of their work. They see survivors begin to smile again, children laugh freely, families rebuild, but they also know that many victims never reach this stage. Some remain trapped, too afraid or too dependent to escape. Others return to abusive partners, convinced that things will change, and tragically, some pay the ultimate price before help arrives. Domestic abuse is not confined to any one demographic. It crosses boundaries of age, wealth, culture, and education. It thrives in silence, feeding on secrecy and stigma. Breaking that silence requires not only the bravery of victims, but also the commitment of communities, governments, and law enforcement. Awareness campaigns, education in schools, and stronger protections in law all play a role in challenging the cycle of violence. The Thames Valley police officers who shared their work for this film speak candidly about the toll it takes. They describe sleepless nights, cases that haunt them, and the frustration of seeing abusers manipulate the system, yet they remain committed, driven by the belief that each intervention can save a life. If we can give someone the chance to start over, to live without fear, then it's worth it. One officer reflects for the survivors. Telling their stories is both painful and empowering. They revisit moments they might rather forget, exposing their deepest vulnerabilities to strangers. But in doing so, they shine a light into the hidden corners where abuse thrives. Their voices carry a message to others still trapped in silence. You are not alone, and help is out there. Rachel says she still has difficult days, but she no longer feels defined by her past. For a long time, I thought I was weak for staying, for putting up with it. Now I see that surviving made me strong. Speaking out made me stronger. Sarah, watching her daughter grow up in a safer environment, feels a sense of purpose. I want her to know that violence is never normal, that love shouldn't hurt. If my story helps even one person walk away, then everything I went through has meaning. Claire continues her fight for justice, but she has found peace in small victories. Every morning I wake up and I'm still here. That's enough. I don't need a court to tell me I survived. I already know I did. Their journeys remind us that domestic abuse is not just a crime of bruises and broken bones. It is a crime of control, of stolen freedom, of shattered trust. And yet, within that darkness, there's resilience, there's survival, there's hope. As this film closes, the stories of Rachel, Sarah, and Claire stand as testament to the countless women and men who endure violence behind closed doors. Their courage in speaking out honors those who cannot, and their survival offers a glimpse of a future where silence is broken and justice prevails. But the work is far from over. Every call to police, every frightened whisper, every hidden bruise is a reminder that this is not an issue of the past. It is happening now in neighborhoods and homes across the country. The challenge belongs not only to law enforcement, but to all of us, to listen, to believe, and to stand with survivors. Domestic abuse strikes at the heart of family and home, but it does not have to define them. With compassion, persistence, and the bravery of those willing to speak, cycles can be broken, lives can be rebuilt, and hope can return. This is not just a story of violence. It is a story of survival,